Story 1. This story is told from the perspective of a female. I am a widowed mother with 2 sons. Both of them are grown up now and in their 30s. They don't live at home with me and have not lived with me for a long time. They are both good boys and often visit me whenever they can. Since my husband passed away, I get an anxious feeling every time the phone rings, ever since I got scammed over the phone by a telesales company that practically bullied me into taking out a cell phone with them on a very long and expensive contract. My husband used to answer these sorts of calls, and he was far better at dealing with these people than I am. I was cooking lunch for myself in the kitchen when my home telephone began ringing. I checked to see which number was calling me from the call screen option on the front of the phone, but it just came up blank. I originally let it ring out, but whoever was on the other end of the line kept calling on repeat and would not give up. I put my cooking on hold and I went and answered the phone. Hello? There was a brief silence on the other end of the line and sort of a strange clicking sound that I could not recognize.
Hi there. Miss Clark?
Yes?
Don't panic. Please don't panic. And listen very carefully to me. We have your son. He is with us now. Can you hear him? We don't want to hurt him, believe me. But we need you to leave $1,000 in your front yard at 6 p.m. today. We are watching your house, so don't try anything crazy with us. Pay, and you can have your son back. Good day.
I tried asking which one of my sons they had kidnapped. Was he okay, and where he was? But they hung up on me, leaving me completely and utterly devastated. I could hear a grown man's screams and cries in the background. How can this be happening to me? And why had someone kidnapped one of my 2 children? I tried phoning both of my sons, but neither of them answered. I was going out of my mind with unbelievable anxiety and panic. I then saw, from my bedroom window, a black 4x4 quickly drive down my street, which also frightened me as I had seen it parked up earlier that day. The only thing I could think to do, the only option I had, was to pay. I didn't have $1,000. I would need to borrow it to be able to pay my son's ransom. I phoned everywhere I could think of that could help lend me that money, but nobody was answering. It was during the day, and everyone was at work. At around 5 p.m., one of my sons phoned me back, and I told him what had happened. He told me he would come over right away, and he did. Then to my amazement, my other son phoned me back. I was scared to answer, because I thought he was being forced to call me by the kidnappers. But he had no idea what I was talking about. He had been at work all day and did not have the slightest idea as to why anyone would say he was or had been kidnapped. Both my sons stayed at my house to look after me, and at 6 p.m. the same black 4x4 I had seen earlier drove slowly past my house, as though they were looking to see if I had left money on the front porch, before driving off very quickly. It later transpired that this had been a telephone scam that a group of local criminals had organized to target elderly people in my local area. They called widows and pretended they had one of their children kidnapped, just to see if they would pay a quick ransom. This case was all over the local news, and to be honest, I'm very glad both my sons got in contact with me, because they certainly had me fooled, and it could have been a lot worse had this gone any further than it did. Story 2. This story happened when I was 12 years old, 10 years ago. Every Thursday night, both my parents would arrive home late from work, and this would be my chance to play video games in the living room all night long, because we only had one television for the whole house, and my parents always got first dibs on anything they wanted to watch. I was in the middle of completing a new level on Duke Nukem when our phone started ringing. I wanted to ignore the call and finish the level I was on, but I couldn't do that because it was most likely my parents calling. They always called every few hours to check up on how I was doing and if I was doing my homework. I answered the phone, but it was not my parents on the other end of the line. It was your classic cheesy salesman type. He asked if my parents were home, and I said they weren't. He then did what all phone salespeople do. He asked me when would they be back again, so he could call at a more convenient time. I told him they would be back late, and that tomorrow would be a better time. He then asked what my name was. I told him it was Max. It was all very routine and standard protocol for most sales calls. I hung up the phone and ran back to my game and unpaused the game and got back to playing. A minute later, the phone started ringing again. I was sure it would be my parents this time, and I reluctantly paused my game again for the second time in 5 minutes to go and answer the phone. Kind of pissed by this point, I answered the phone. It was not my parents. It was the same salesman who had called a few minutes earlier. His first words were, "So Max, what you doing?" I asked him why, and he said, "Well, I heard the background music of a video game, and I love video games. What are you playing, Max?" I told him that I was playing Duke Nukem. He then said, "No way, I love Duke Nukem." I thought he was trying to get more information out of me, to help him sell whatever he was trying to push to my parents. But what he said next was so freaky and odd. "You interested in having a video game buddy, Max?" I hung up the phone and freaked out to my bones, and I don't know how, but I managed to go straight back to playing my video game. The phone rang a few more times, but I did not answer it. I just kept gaming. Around half an hour later, I was happily playing video games when I was startled by a tap on the glass of my living room window. I looked out to see a man stood in my front yard with a bag of Haribo in his hand, looking right into my living room, looking right at me. "Max?" the man said. "Hey buddy, let me in. Let's play some Duke Nukem." I screamed so loud that my neighbors must have heard me, because the neighbors, the house opposite, came out of their house. The man then put the bag of sweets into his pocket and shouted over to my neighbors, "Sorry, wrong house," before quickly walking off down the block. I told my parents what happened, and they phoned the company this man claimed to work for, but they had no record of calling us on their system. My parents didn't leave me home alone again after that. They always got an adult to come over and watch me. The strange man on the other end of the phone never called or came over to my house again. Story 3. I used to work in this chicken shack on the late night shifts. My job would be to handle the deliveries. I would never answer the phones, just be told to take food out to whatever address I was given on my motorcycle. This big order came in at around 11:20 p.m. To this day, I can still remember everything that was ordered. 5 boxes of popcorn chicken, 7 chicken sandwiches, 12 boxes of chicken strips, 15 packs of French fries, and some dipping sauces and drinks. Bear in mind that this chicken shack used to stay open until 3 a.m. on weekends, so going out at almost midnight to do a delivery was not really a big deal, and was even considered early as far as deliveries were concerned. I loaded up all the food onto my motorbike in the back box and began my drive. The house was around 10 miles away and was in quite a rough part of town. It was a part of town that was famous for the amount of homeless and jobless people living in that area. We call that part of town Welfareville, and we usually stay clear of that area. And just to mention, many local restaurants flat out refused to deliver to that area after certain hours, due to late night robberies, with a lot of them either being violent or at gunpoint. As I got close to the house, I drove quickly through the quiet and empty back streets, and I pulled up in front of this house. This absolute shitbox of a house torn to pieces and falling apart. This was a massive red flag, because this was an expensive order, and this house looked as though they couldn't even afford to keep the electricity on or even board up their windows properly. I didn't want to go near the house, but could you imagine if I had booked it out of there without even trying to knock on the door, and the family ended up complaining? I walked up and rang the doorbell. There was no answer whatsoever, no sign of life coming from inside the house. What you do when nobody answers is you phone their phone number, given when the order was taken. I dialed the number on my cell phone, but nobody answered that either. 30 seconds after my attempted call, I received a text message saying, "Please come round back, gate is open." I looked to the right-hand side of me, and the gate was in fact open. I was very scared, as there was no light to see where I was going. I walked around the back. The backyard of this house had long grass that had grown up out of control, and it came up to my knees. I walked around the side of the house, and as I did that, I caught a glimpse of a shadow move on the other side of the glass. I took out my phone and called the number that had messaged me. They would not answer, but I could clearly hear a phone ringing on the other side of the glass, meaning that someone was in there, but not answering, and probably watching what I was doing. This was all very weird, and I wanted to just leave, but my boss was an absolute jerk-off. If we ever came back with food, he would blame us, regardless of the situation. I then received another text message that just said, "Please wait." I could then hear movement coming from all different directions. Only slight movements, but enough to let me know that there were people watching me. I then heard someone move inside the house, on the other side of the glass, and at the same time, I also heard someone move in the long grass. I could also hear someone moving in the front yard. I felt shock run through my body as my phone started ringing. I took it out of my pocket. On the screen, there was the telephone number that I had tried calling. I answered and said, "Hi, I'm round the back with the chicken." Trying to be as calm and collected as possible, trying my best not to sound scared to death. On the other end of the phone, there was a deep voice, a man's voice, that said, "We have you surrounded. Put the chicken on the floor and fuck off, or you will be going to hospital. Do it now." I placed the chicken on the floor, and I put my hands in the air as though I was surrendering peacefully, and then I ran as though my life depended on it, out of the backyard. I got on my bike and started the engine, and as I drove off, I could see a man hiding in the front yard, watching me. I drove as quickly as I could back to the shack, and you guessed it. My boss blamed me for the whole thing. I still have the same job, but my new policy is simple. You didn't answer, I'm gone. I don't wait around for anyone or anything nowadays. Story 4. This is my experience with freaky phone calls that happened last summer holidays and actually carried on and on for half a year. It all started one day when I checked my phone after class, and I had like 30 plus missed calls from this number that I did not recognize. They did not leave a voice message, and when I played the message, I couldn't really believe my ears or what I was hearing. It wasn't English. It didn't even sound human. It was kind of like how I would imagine the devil talking. And it was just the same line on repeat, over and over again, in every message. It was weird and really, really creepy. I would call the number back all the time, but they would never answer their phone. But they would call me back and either say the same line they always said, or they would just leave a voice message with it. They never said anything else, and it was so horrifying. The voice, the noise it was making. I kept getting these messages all the time, and I even changed my phone number 2 times. But this person would always find a way to get my number, and the calls would continue again, and even be worse and more frequent. It was like whoever was doing this wanted to punish me for changing my phone number. I told my best friend Matt what was happening, and he asked me to send him the audio from one of the many voicemail messages that this person had left. I downloaded one of the messages, and I sent it to Matt. I didn't hear back from him for a few days, but when he eventually sent me a message saying, "We need to talk, urgent," I called him straight away, and he told me to come over to his house. When I arrived at Matt's house, he had some sort of audio program already set up and running on his computer. He told me that he'd been playing around with the audio, and that he'd found a hidden message inside the audio that clearly said,
"I will kill you, and I will make it very painful and slow."
The track had been chopped and put backwards and distorted a little bit, and that is why it was not understandable. It had been mixed up. It was some sort of sick game of riddles to see if I would ever be able to figure it out. I stopped using my cell phone entirely after that, from fear of more messages or anything else happening. I am now ready to get a new cell phone, but I will be honest, I'm very scared as to what will happen. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below your opinion on the video, or if you've ever had any scary phone calls yourself. If you like this video, please give it a rating and a comment, and if you're new to my channel, welcome, and please subscribe for more real-life horror stories.